Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau, and I hope that you are having an amazing week. I am really excited to talk to today's guest and bring her out. I love talking to OG organizers. I love talking to other authors who have a different perspective of kind of how to look at clutter. I think it's so important to be able to learn different strategies from different people and like really apply different kind of schools of thought to how we're approaching our stuff. Because again, we can all get caught so much up in the like tactical weeds of like, what are we keeping? What are we getting rid of? Where are we putting our stuff? Are we going vertical? Like, and all of that's great, but it's really so important. And again, if you've been like a listener of our show for any amount of time, you know that the psychology of clutter is something that I have really dove into for the better part of my career. And so when I have the opportunity to talk to other people who are really looking at kind of where your clutter stems from and be able to identify that as a way for you to then maybe change your behavior moving forward in a positive way, I love shining light on that. And so joining me today is Tracy McCubbin. And Tracy is the founder of dClutterfly. And not only has she been in the organizing space for like almost 2 decades, so she and I are like right there. We've seen it all. But they've been the author of several books, including her latest book, which we're going to talk about today. I have it right here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see a picture of it. It's called Make Space for Happiness. And we're going to talk all about it, but she talks all about these different, what she calls clutter magnets. And it's really interesting as she walks through it. And I love the book. I read it cover to cover for reals. And she just shares a lot of anecdotal stories of her experiences with clients and just unpacking kind of the different nuances of where they were struggling and how they had different breakthroughs. So if you're somebody out there that's listening that might feel like you're just destined for disorganization or you have yet to find the strategy that works for you, you're going to want to lean into this episode. So without further ado, let me welcome my friend, Tracy McCubbin, to the show. Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, Lori. What a great intro. And I want to thank you because like an OG like you, I feel the same way. I feel like everybody needs as many tools in their tool belt as they can get. And sometimes what one organizer or one expert says resonates with somebody in a different way. So I'm like, read everything, learn everything, and as you move through life and your relationship to your stuff changes, it's different if you're a young mom versus your parents just passed away. So I am so excited to talk to you. And I really appreciate, we're all just doing the best we can, and let's learn and grow and get better.
Yeah. And for other people that are out there, I also love the similarities. Like when I'm reading your book and I'm like, oh, I do that too.
Yeah.
It's just that reinforcement of okay, there is some, we're onto something, right? If enough people are saying it, there's got to be some element of truth to it. Or, oh, I do this, but I've never looked at it or approached it with this particular, from this perspective. And so, as somebody who mentor other professional organizers and champions other people and really subscribes to, building this community of organizers. I think it really is great to be able to shine light on people who are also in a similar space. And again, if you're somebody out there that is struggling, looking at people that have different methodologies to find what works for you is so important, because again, some people are like, oh my gosh, Marie Kondo changed my life. And that's great. And other people are like, that is not my jam, and it's
Yeah.
so like, there's something for everybody. And I love that. So, okay. Now I want you to fill in the blanks, because I gave, a top line overview. Tell our listeners in your own words a little bit about you.
Absolutely. So I'm one of those, I didn't start my organizing business till my 40s, till right when I turned 40. And I was one of those people that,
wait, then you have not been doing this for 2 decades.
Almost 17 years.
Really?
Now I'm
Damn,
58.
Girlfriend. Damn, girlfriend, you look great.
Thank you. Well, I just got married, so I'm very happy.
So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
So, so I had been a personal assistant. I had been executive assistant. I'd been in the typing pool. I'd run small businesses. I'd done all these things. And I started just kind of helping people. I didn't even know it was a business. I didn't even know it was a thing. I was like, oh, your garage is messy. Yeah, I'm really good at that. Or, oh, your grandma passed away. Let me help you go through her stuff. And I joke that my little flip phone started blowing up. And a friend of mine was like, this is a business. And I was like, no, this is just how I help people. And he's like, no, I think it's really a business. So I made a little website and had my little station wagon. And that was 17 years ago. I have 12 employees now. We have trucks. We have a warehouse. I love what I do. And also for people who are out there that are like in this next chapter of their life, like it's never too late to start. It's never too late to start. And I think that also sometimes when you clear the clutter in your home, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to do something different. It frees you up to see all the opportunities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I love hearing people's origin stories, because not only am I just curious, because I think stories and people are interesting, but I think it is inspiring for people that are out there that going, oh, wow, whatever nugget they take away of like, wow, I'm good at organizing, or I'm good at fill in the blank. I didn't realize I could make a living doing it. Or, wow, I'm 40, and not that that's old, because it's not, but like, people are like, maybe I want to make a change in my life. Maybe I'm unhappy in my current job, or maybe I'm in a different season of life and I'm looking to kind of do something on my own. So I think there's so much value again in just hearing like where people come from and how they started, and also the spectrum. And we've talked about this on our show a ton. Like the landscape of the organizing world looks so different 17 years ago. There was no social media, or very, very limited. And I mean, I always tell the story. My girls, who are now like 19 and 22, used to tell people that I was in the business of flyers. What did your mom do? She does flyers. Because I would legitimately make up a pretty Word document. Like there's no Canva. I would make up a pretty Word document and like stick them in people's mailboxes, letting the people know what I did. And I would drive around with my kids in their car seats, and they were like, where's your mom? She's just flyers.
Oh my God, Lori, yeah, no, 17 years ago, nobody knew what it was. Nobody, that's what I think is so exciting about this profession too, is like, we're now realizing, like, now that we're in the middle of this silver tsunami, and, we've got like all these people who are in the sandwich generation and raising little kids and dealing with aging parents, like what the service that organizers provide is more important than ever. Like people need this help. It didn't just blow up because we wanted it to. It blew up because people need the help. So if somebody's out there and like thinking about it as a business, it's great. And it's,
right.
And more people are understanding like, oh, I need this help. I can't do this on my own. And there's someone who can help me. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk, because I'm a little bit of a data nerd. Like I love statistics, and especially just to kind of back that up, right? I'm a very like kind of like, let's facts are your friends person. And so you talk about, and I'm just going to actually just read the quote, because I put it kind of right in front of me. It says, as you talk a lot in the book about pandemic purchases, right? There's a whole like section about that. And so it's really telling, obviously we're going to have all the links and everything later, but it says, as America attempts to recover from pandemic purchases that have left our homes full of stuff, it's no surprise that two-thirds of Americans admitted to having too many things in their homes, especially due to excessive online shopping during the pandemic. And again, we talk about a lot of different contributing factors to the excess of stuff, right? Or not being organized. Let me put it that way. We're busy and overscheduled. We don't have the time to do things. We don't have the right strategies. But then there is also just the cold, hard facts of we're buying at a rate because of ease, because of comfort, because of all of these things. And so the result is all of this stuff with no place to put it, right? And so I want you to really kind of just riff and elaborate on that, because that's a really big theme in your book.
Absolutely. You know, I think that we can't talk about decluttering and getting organized if we're not talking about our acquisition and our consuming. I mean, totally. You know, you've been doing this. Clients look at you with like big, like deer in headlights, and they're like, I don't know how all this stuff got in my house. And I'm like, you brought it in. You or someone in your house purchased it and brought it in. Mm-hmm. So I realized after doing this for so long, and I, started to see, especially during the pandemic, clients slipping and calling me and saying, remember all that stuff that we decluttered? I bought it all over again. And plus, we see those towers of packages on people's doorsteps, like the Amazon trucks and the blue bins full of cardboard boxes. And it really just occurred to me, like, we have to talk about our consumption. We have to talk about what we're buying. And we are shopping. We can shop 24 hours. You don't even have to put pants on to shop anymore. You just roll over, grab your phone, and, so the shopping is out of control, and it's resulting in so much clutter and disorganization in people's houses. And I think another big component is that we're being marketed to all the time.
Literally it's one of my biggest things, because I'm somebody who I feel like is pretty disciplined when it comes to consumerism. And even I find myself, I'm like, I might need those flip-flops. They look, because they, like you said, you can't stop it the way unless you're like, I'm not going on social media, or I'm not there's so much, but you have to be so rigid. One of the things I used to tell people all the time, and I still do it, is unsubscribe from catalogs, right? Back in the day, right? You don't know you need it until all of a sudden the catalog says, oh, we're doing this spring special. And then all of a sudden you see it. So to not only avoid the paper clutter, I used to tell people, just unsubscribe, just don't even get it.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's just being, like you said, it's marketed to you through, every time we turn on our computers
and
or open social media. Yeah,
absolutely. And, it used to be back in the olden days, when we had 3 TV channels, you knew the commercials were at 12 after and 18 after, and you got a glass of water. But now in social media, it's, this expression like parasocial bestie, right? Mm-hmm. It's people that online, and you think you have a relationship with them. And then they start telling you to buy something. And you're like, oh, my best friend is telling me this mascara is great. So all of a sudden we're losing our media literacy. We're losing the fact of this is a commercial. This isn't a friend. And that's contributing to our consumption. And then we're not thinking about, what do we do with it when we get rid of it?
Yes, it's so funny because I just, the time that this airs, it will have already come out, but I just did for Earth Day, I did a, recycling responsibly, because I think a lot of people, we talk a lot here about kind of that shame that people have. And a lot of times we'll see people holding on to things out of guilt because they don't want to contribute more to a landfill or more to the problem. And so they wind up just holding on to things, again, for the wrong reasons. But I think it's important to peel back the layers and shine a light on how can we nip this in the bud moving forward, right? You can't change what you've already done, but
Right.
what can we do now to be more proactive in our decision making? And, you talk a lot about these different clutter magnets in the book. And wondering if maybe now's a good time for you to just kind of like walk through each of those, and we can kind of just, give a little bit of description through what each of them how they differ.
Totally. And, I think you've been doing this for a long time. So we all know that basically our clients, the people, everybody, they have the same stories, right? Like our clients who keep things, that's the same. I paid good money for it. It was my grandma's, right? So there are these universal stories. So what I started to see is that people had these universal stories about why they were shopping. Like there was something missing inside of them and they were shopping. And like you, I am a data nerd. I am a science nerd. I'm like, why is this happening? So I did a deep dive on basically the science of shopping. Why do we shop? And one of the things that I learned is that, which makes that's the amazing thing about facts. When you learn them, you're like, that's why it's that way.
Right.
We're biologically made up to be hunters and gatherers. So back when we were, roaming the plains and you found an apple tree or you found a rabbit, you got a hit of dopamine to like pick the apples or kill the rabbit and save it for winter. What's happened is we haven't evolved out of that. So now when you go to Target, you get the same hit of dopamine as if you'd killed a woolly mammoth for your family. So we get this hit of dopamine. Shopping makes us feel better. It only lasts about 17 or 20 seconds. And then you're like, well, I need another one. And then I need another one. And so we keep buying to get that feeling again. And what I identified in the clutter magnets is what do we think that's missing in us? And what we're using shopping to fill it up, but how can we fill it up other ways? So one of the first ones is true connection. Like when you don't feel connected. We're working with clients right now, lovely older couple, so sweet. She fully admitted she's in her 70s, fully like, I have a shopping problem. It came up during the pandemic. I've never done this before. And as we started to talk, she was like, well, I retired of my job from 35 years, which was I went to an office every day and saw everybody. I stopped going to church in person. I now go on the computer and I stopped playing bridge. So basically all of her connecting with her people was taken away and she was trying to fill it with shopping. So, that's a big one, being connected. Here's another one, strong self-confidence. If they slap on anti-aging on a product.
I was like, yeah. And I mean, we're like same generation. It's like, oh, wait a second. That can hide my grays, change my, make my cellulite disappear, whatever,
Right, exactly. And, the funny thing is I always joke, don't we want aging? Because isn't the opposite of aging dead? Like, don't we want to keep aging? So there's those products that play on our self-confidence. There's the things we buy to magnetize free time, right? All the gadgets that everybody buys to save themselves time. A big one I see, these are my grandparents, my parents, big love buying gifts to get someone's love. I have little nieces and nephews and I start very young. I used to go visit them and I would bring little presents and I put it in my suitcase. And then the last couple of times I went, like I walked in the door and they just dove on the suitcase. And I was like, oh yeah, I did this. This isn't them. This is me.
Right.
So I stopped for the last couple trips. I haven't brought anything. And they're like, oh my God, we're so happy to see you. And I'm like, right. I was training them to expect a gift from me every time I showed up. I want them to be excited that I'm there and spend time with them. So I just stopped. And you know what? They haven't asked for one. They haven't missed it. I was doing it, right? Because I was like, oh, this love is transactional.
And I think for a lot of people, again, and if people are like familiar with, different love languages, a lot of people will say, their love language is gifts and how they like to express things in material ways. And, I don't ever want to shame somebody for doing it, but I think you have to also, I think that's a very common one for a lot of people, where we're going to reward our kid for getting a good grade and we're going to buy them something. or we're going to use your stuff as a punishment to take it away. And I think that using material things as a weapon.
Yes.
And I don't mean to be overly dramatic. That
No,
may
but
sound dramatic to
I
people. It just sends a mixed message as opposed to something being, and there are things that we use that are for pure entertainment and enjoyment. I mean, I just celebrated my birthday yesterday and it was nice to get some gift. Thank you. And it was nice. Like I got this pretty necklace that I'm wearing, you know what I mean? From my friend. And I love it. But you know what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Right. And I think that I think the point with all of this, right, with clutter, with getting organized, with shop, with all of it, it's about being aware. It's about being intentional. It's about finding a balance. I'm not saying don't ever shop. I'm like you. I love pretty things. Like I love a house full of pretty things. Like I'm never saying that, but when it gets out of whack, right? Like I see this with grandparents all the time. They overbuy and then they buy things that like don't fit in the grandkids' house, and then they get their feelings hurt because I bought this thing for you. I was at a client's recently and the in-laws had bought all 3 kids not little, they were like 3 feet, 4 feet long, little, like get in them airplanes. So they were like 4 feet long by 3 feet wide and they'd monogram their names on them. And my client was like, we literally don't have room. Like, I don't know where these are going to go. My kids don't really like them. Like, and it turned into a thing because the, grandmother was like, but I bought this expensive thing. And so, it's about, yes, gift giving, and it may be your love language, but when it gets out of whack, when you're leaning into that, that's where we have to, pay attention.
So for somebody that's listening out there, and I know I want to get back and let you finish walking through them, but I think this is an important thing for somebody that's listening out there, that's like, yes, that is the story of my life. Every time my mother-in-law comes over or my mom comes over, like they're bringing all of this stuff. I know what I've done and when my kids were growing up, but like, what's your advice to people of like, how do they navigate that? Like, cause I was just the person where I'm a very direct communicator. So I would be like, yeah, we're not doing that, but that's not everybody is comfortable having those conversations.
I'm with you. I'm like, you just say it, like you just say it from the beginning. And also I want to take a moment.
Yeah.
I've been saying this, if your child gets invited to a birthday party and the invitation says no gifts, don't bring a
gift. Yep. Amen.
Thank you. Like, exactly. So I always say with grandparents, just to not only just say, hey, that doesn't, like, we don't have room for that, or don't do that, but then offer, like, you know what the grandkids really want? They really want to spend time with you. Can you come over and like teach them how to make your favorite cookie recipe? Can you take them fishing? Like, frame it in such a way that it's not that just we don't want the gift, but they want to spend time with you. Can you take them to the library? Can you read your favorite book with them? Like, offer up a way for the grandparents to connect without the stuff.
And also there's other things like that I recommend, like in terms of like practical stuff. And again, so if if your child, like I had one daughter that was really into sports and one that was really into music. And I mean, and especially with things being so expensive, say, you know what, could you buy her like a week camp or like, especially if they're going to, if they are, and I'm talking, these are for people that are like, we want to use a monetary expression of something, or we want to, we have the money, the means, and we want to do that. Hey, can you get something that there would be doing anyway? And that would just add to it and say, hey, this week-long camp that you wanted to go to, well, my mom and pop are sending you to that camp. Like there's so many ways that if you want to express it, but I think a lot of times people feel unsure because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And so they don't know how to approach it, but maybe providing some alternatives, like you said, is really a way to do it.
And I think if you're dealing with a heavy gift giver, right? Someone who's, I mean, clearly something's going on with them that they're feeling that. But to be honest and say, like, you are so generous with our kids and your grandkids. They love you so much. Like, things are expensive and we're having a bit of a tough time. Can what would be so appreciated is like all of her softball equipment or the
Right.
camp, or like that would be something that would be used and loved. Like a toy's going to be played with and tossed aside. Like this, my grandmother sent me every year. She paid for me to go to sleepaway camp. It was like some of the best experiences of my life. My family couldn't afford it. It was something she loved to do. Like to this day, like sleepaway camp was the greatest thing. And I know still in my 50s that my grandmother contributed to that. And I
Right.
still remember that. I cannot remember one present she bought me.
Right. Right. I know. And I think for a lot of people, it's just second nature, like
Right.
you're not thinking about it. And it just, like, this is what we do. It's somebody's birthday. You buy them a present, like a tangible material gift.
And I also want to say this. I really want to normalize exactly what you're saying, that it's okay to ask people exactly what they want. It's okay to tell people exactly what you want. Like, we're not mind readers. I don't want people wasting their money on me. And I'm with you. Like, I love getting presents and I love when people are thoughtful, but also it's okay to help people out. Like this thing that like you should know exactly what I want and get it right, and I should get like it's setting everybody up for failure. And so I'm like, let's just normalize talking about it.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's get back. So the next one I love is about self-respect. So
Yeah,
I want you to just kind of talk about that.
Yeah, this is such a big one. This is, people shopping labels, buying, have to have the newest Louis Vuitton, have to have this, have to, to show their self-respect. And the thing about this one that's so interesting to me is,
so is it like status? You would call that
Yep.
status.
Yep.
Another way to phrase it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I would call it status clutter. And yes, exactly. Yep. And the thing is, it never comes from the stuff, right? You can have all the stuff.
Never about the stuff.
It's
or
never
rarely. Rarely. I mean, never. It's.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, exactly. Status. It's totally that. This is a really interesting one. And I've been seeing a big increase in this in the age of social media and Etsy is real purpose, where people are searching for their real purpose. And they're buying all the things. So they're like, I'm supposed to be a knitter. And they go and they buy and now I got to open an Etsy store. And now I got to, and I think there's such this pressure now with the idea that you have to have a side hustle. And, if you bake cookies and you don't post it, were they delicious? And so I think that sometimes we do things because we just love to do them. And that's okay.
Right. Like you can love to bake without running a cookie business, right? You can love to take pictures without being a professional photographer. Now, I'm all, as an entrepreneur, and same as you, I'm all for turning your passion into a profession, if that's what you want to do.
Totally.
Right? Like, we're here for it. But sometimes having a hobby or something that you enjoy doing is enough. And as long as you're doing it, I think we don't have to one up.
Exactly. So one of my best friends called me the other day, and her mother, super cute, 25 years ago when she got married, I hosted her bridal shower, and her mother gave me a hand crocheted blanket that I still have. So for my wedding 2 weeks ago, her mom made a new one, which is so sweet. So she's like, oh, Frankie's back. She's, knitting all these blankets again. They're so great. Her mom's in her late 70s, I think. And she's like, I'm telling her she's got to open an Etsy store. And she's and I'm like, okay, stop. Like, do you want to run an Etsy store? Because she's not going to be able to do it. And she's like, well, she's just making so many blankets. And I'm like, why don't you call the local chemotherapy or dialysis, place? They need blankets all the time. The baby's in the NICU. There are places that blankets can go that it doesn't have to turn into a business. Cause I'm like, your mom in her late 70s is not going to run an Etsy store. And honestly, that's not what it's about for her. And she was like, oh my golly, you're so right. I'm like, there's so many places, and she can make these things that she loves, and she doesn't have to make it a business. So I am with you. I am 100% turn your passion into your business if it makes sense for you.
Right.
If you just love doing it, knock your socks off. That's great.
Right. I love it. Absolutely. And again, it's not clutter, in my opinion, if you're using it and it's serving you well. It's becomes clutter if you're like, I went out and bought all the stuff to become a knitter during COVID and I have all of this stuff and now I don't knit and I'm sitting with all this stuff that's taking up real estate in my life. Right. But if you're doing it, then it's not clutter. It's serving a purpose.
Exactly. Exactly. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I think, I do. I think sometimes just having a hobby to have a hobby, great.
Right.
Why not? And the last clutter magnet, this is a good one. This is lasting wisdom. This is where we buy all the things to get smarter. We buy all the books that we never read. We print out all the articles that we never read. We, buy 8 million online courses. Like, this idea that, yes, I'm a seeker. I'm reading all the time. I'm learning all the time. I'm connecting with people. I'm listening to podcasts all the time. But also even me, I'm like, I looked at my stack of to be read books the other day and I was like, oh yeah, nope. Until you get through this stack, there's no more buying books. And I made a note in my phone of the books that I wanted to read. And when I get through this stack, I will go to the library and I will start to work my way through it. Like the stack was overwhelming. And I'm like, I'm never going to read these. Like it's too many.
It's funny because I have a Goodreads list personally. So I just go in and I'll just be like, oh, I want to read this. But as you'll see, when we wrap up our conversation, one of the questions I ask all of our guests is what book are you reading or what's a book that's been transformational? So you'll obviously be answering that. But I tell people all the time, I selfishly ask this question, not only because I'm curious, but it gives me like all these prompts of these great books that I may or may not have heard of. And so what do I do? 9 times out of 10, I'm like, well, I'm just going to go buy this book right now. Right. And I'm like you, where I wind up having a bunch of books. And then I'm like, wait, I have to get through this because there's no way that,
I think and I think Goodreads, that's such a great way to do it. Goodreads, like for our local libraries, you put yourself on the list for books, because they're always not available. So I sort of create that list that you're talking about at my library, and then I'll get a ping and it's like, this Daisy Jones in the 6 is in, and you're like, oh, fantastic.
That's awesome. And we really need, and I'm saying and I'm really pointing at me, really need to get, because again, the ease of convenience to be able to, and I'm guilty of it just as much as anybody. I'm not an Amazon hater or whatever, but like, it's so easy to just click and buy. And we don't need to consume all of it. Like, I really should be utilizing my library more. Not that I don't want to support an author. I'm an author, you're an author, and I love, being able to support people. But like, again, there are times where we're like, I can ask a friend if they have it. I can borrow it. And all of those little things also are little ways that you can start to reduce the consumption.
Yep, exactly. And I'm like you, but also like, get the audiobook. Like, there's so many ways. And of course it is funny being an author, but I'm like, go to the library, like get it. And also like, if you start to read, my husband's reading a John Steinbeck book right now. And I'm like, we don't need to buy that again. Like John Steinbeck is long gone. Like we can go to the library and get that book. So I think that, but I think that that's, again, you just said it. It's like, it's all about being aware of our consumption,
Yeah, I love it. I want to pivot for a second because this is when we were prepping for the show and I was doing a little research. You mentioned kind of in your intake stuff that you grew up in a house with an extreme hoarder. And we just released an episode with my friend Matt Paxton all about hoarding. And really the definition, again, people throw the term around very loosely in a vernacular sense, but in all seriousness, it is a serious, usually trauma-based disorder. And I'm just wondering, obviously there's a connection of probably how you ended up doing this. Like, it's not just a coincidence. But I would love for you to just talk a little bit about what that was like growing up and just kind of paint a picture for people.
Sure. And I also want to give a little shout out to Matt Paxton. I've been following him for many years, and he was the first person I had always felt it. But he was the first person that I ever heard also likened hoarding disorder to an addiction. And I was like, because everything I'd witnessed, it felt like growing up with an alcoholic. It was this thing had control over him. It still does, so I really, if someone out there is worried about it with themselves or someone that they love, he is an unbelievable resource. He really is a kind human and really understands. So go read his book and follow him. And he just, it's great. So, so interestingly, part of why my parents split up was his hoarding. So he lived somewhere else, but we saw him every weekend, and it was difficult. And as his life went on and more traumatic events happened to him, it got worse and worse and worse. So I spent my whole life watching someone be in a chokehold with their relationship with their stuff. That was the most important thing, and I've heard children of alcoholics say, I felt like my father, my mother chose the bottle over me. And that's how I felt. Like, I feel like my dad chose the dumpster over me. And it wasn't until many, 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 acknowledging hoarding disorder is relatively new. For a long time, they thought it was a symptom of OCD, and and now all of a sudden, really not till like the 90s, where they like, no, this is its thing. So finally, when I learned, like, he's not doing this on purpose. That was the thing I always thought. He was doing it on purpose. Like, well, just stop. And once you realize that, and I think what that just gave me so much compassion and empathy that the hold, even if you're not dealing with hoarding disorder, or if you have a low grade of it, the hold that your stuff can have on you. And people will sacrifice everything.
And so is your dad still alive? He is. And is he still struggling?
He is. Yes, he's still struggling.
I'm
pretty extremely.
I'm pretty sorry.
And it doesn't get easier with age, because as their physical limitations come in, it gets actually much, much more difficult. So if somebody's out there, I'm going to just please get help. Talk to a mental health professional. There are a lot of therapies, cognitive behavior therapy. There's a lot of stuff that can work. And especially if you're the child of one, because it's so frustrating. So educate yourself, read Matt's book. There's another book called Buried in Treasures. They're not doing it on purpose, even though it feels like they are.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I guess another thing I would just like to clarify, do you, as a professional organizer, obviously you have a unique perspective about hoarding from your personal experience. But are those the types of clients that, right. And that's what I just also want to kind of, shine light on that as well. And Matt and I talked about that on the episode that he was on, where, most professional organizers are not trained to work with people with a true hoarding disorder, because it's not just somebody that is seeking one of, that is trying to magnetize these different clutter magnets. They're not somebody that is just a little bit lonely or bored or trying to fill a void. There's another depth of level.
And I'm someone who knows a lot about hoarding disorder. I have and I did in the beginning of my career work with a few, and I was like, I can't, this is too hard. I'm not, it didn't work. I do specialize in cleaning out houses after someone who had hoarding disorder passes, or they've been moved into senior living. But I even if they're willing, I know it's just exactly. I'm just not trained. I'm just not trained.
And I think that's the key for people that are listening. You know, if you're listening out there right now and you're like, either I'm struggling or my parent, sibling, whatever, you need to have a medical professional and then working in conjunction. And Matt talked about that on our episode. So I'll make sure I link to that too.
Yeah, it's super important. And, you know, and again, even somebody like me who has grown up around it and is very educated around it, I don't do it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So call Matt.
Yeah.
If you need help, call Matt. He's just a love. I'm such a fan of his.
So for the everyday person, right? We'll call them the everyday person that is just, again, identifying with one of these or maybe multiple, but, you know, one of these kind of clutter magnets of why they're shopping or, you know, to kind of fill this void of whatever it is. What are some practical steps? Like identifying it is step one, I think, right? Now we can name it, but then what do you do about it? How do you make that transition? And again,
this is great. So a couple of things that I tell people that are really easy to do. First thing, this is a language switch, and you're going to love this. Stop saying I need. Stop saying I need a new pair of jeans. I need a new blush. I need a new, you know, whatever the thing is. 99.9% of the time, you don't need it. You just want it. And that's okay. That's totally okay. But just start saying, I want. Be truthful to yourself what's really going on. And a lot of times what happens when you acknowledge that it's just a want is that the power goes away. Like you're like, oh, I just wanted a cookie and now I don't want one anymore. I just wanted, you know, that third glass of wine. I don't want that anymore. So taking the step and taking the need out of it and calling it a want, it's a game changer. Like just like, oh, it doesn't have that grip on me. So that's a big one. That's a great one. Another thing I tell people, you can decide your dollar amount. For me, I do it for every $100. Some people do it for every $50. Wait 24 hours before you buy it.
Yep. I love it's like one of those, like, it's really kind of simple, but it is effective. It's just like the flipping of the hanger. Did you ever do the flipping of the hanger where you're like, turn it, but and if like you haven't worn it, the hanger's still backwards, you know, right? I mean, again, it's like so simple, but it really does.
It really works. This one really, really works. And the other thing this one's tough and it's going to be very confronting. Run an Amazon report. You can run a report on Amazon of your spending. They give you a spreadsheet of what you've spent. Yeah. Lori's like,
that's scary. Well, I'm a big budgeter. And so you could see like your categories of like what you spend in, like, oh, I actually ate out and spent this much money. Like, so you could do that for your,
So this goes hand in hand with that. And the thing that's so fascinating, it's like you see it. I think they tell you the time that you bought it, which is super interesting. I think
that is also, am I a late night shopper? Am I like, is this, you know,
all those things. So, you know, running that report. And again, we're not running it to punish ourselves. No. We're running it to educate ourselves. And if you're a budgeter, you're going to you're like, oh, this is what I spent the money on. Oh, wow. Could I have gotten that? You know, could I have waited? Did I have to have that thing right now? Could I have waited and done a little research and bought it cheaper somewhere else? You know, when we buy with Amazon, it's like, oh, I need this. I need it right now. Let me buy it. So it's a really effective tool. It's a really effective tool.
I love that. Those are 3 very simple, actionable steps that require no money. Like, it's not and that's what I love about it is the hard part is the discipline to do it, to action. Yes. I mean, and that's like with everything, like that's the hard part. Like it's like, to be intentional about trying to catch yourself every time you say, I need, you know, switching that over. And it's something that I did with my girls when they were younger. And I would say, like, is this a need or a want? And they thankfully like have grown up with that, drinking that Kool-Aid. So, I mean, I'm not saying it always works, but you know what I mean? Like it just having that perspective, it does really change it. And again, I've done the 24 hours is good. It's also good if you're like writing emails that you might be a little bit aggressive about. It's good to wait 24 hours for that too. So
put those in your
might,
draft box.
Yeah, I might speak from experience. I don't know, but no, I'm just kidding. But I love it. I love it. It's just, I think sometimes again, it's when we actually look at what our behavior is telling us, then it's like, wow, we're looking in the mirror. And again, it's not to shame anybody. It's not to judge anybody. But if you want to make these changes, there are little things that you can do that will make a huge impact. I love all this. Okay. So before we take our last break, tell our listeners if they want to buy your book, learn more, work with you, all the things, where's the best place for them to go to connect up?
TracyMcCubbin.com, MCCUBBIN is great. I have a quiz on there if you want to find out where you're sort of stuck around your clutter. And it's fantastic. We're having a really good time. I send newsletters, once every couple of weeks. And then also Instagram is my really big platform at Tracy_McCubbin. I do these 5-minute things you can declutter in 5-minute challenges. I'm sort of putting up stuff all the time. It's a very supportive, loving, my followers really are supporting each other. It's great. We're having a good time over there.
We love it. And again, we're going to link up to all things Tracy. And I want to tell everybody, Tracy was gracious enough to gift me some books that we're going to be doing a giveaway. So I have this book and we've got a couple others so that we are going that are over yonder for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Here's how you're going to enter. I'm keeping it really simple, guys, because the best way to support this show is by telling other people about it. So I'm asking anybody who's interested, if you like this episode, would you just write us a little quick review? And you could do that in Apple. And if you're listening on Spotify and I don't know if you can write reviews on Spotify. I don't know, but like you can just write it on Instagram or wherever and tag us. But if you're on Apple, write a little review, screenshot it, and just tag us. You could tag Tracy and tag me at This Organized Life podcast. And we're just going to pick some winners at random and we're going to send you guys Tracy's book. So
great. And give Lori 5 stars, man. Aww. She's the OG. She's, it's so funny. And I love that there's this next generation coming up and they're very interesting, but it's also like, we've been doing this for a long time.
I know people are like, how long have you been doing it? I'm like, I don't know, 150 years. I don't know.
Let's just say I organized the Last Supper. Like I was there.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So we are going to just take a quick break. We're going to come back, just do our quick wrap up questions. So sit tight. As I mentioned before, love books. I love reading. I love learning, and I love finding out what inspires our guests to get up and do the things that they do in life. And so is there a book that either you're currently reading, or maybe it's a book that you've read that you either come back to, or that like you recommend to people that's had like a real big impact that you can share with us?
I'm actually rereading it.
Okay.
I'm reading a book called The Tools by Phil Stutz.
Okay.
I think I have it. I think I just put it somewhere. I'm not sure where it went. It was over there. His name is Dr. Phil Stutz, and he is a psychiatrist. And I had the amazing pleasure to work with him 25 years ago. And he is all about giving you tools to get out of your own way.
God.
And sort of your ego. And he's very smart. They're very doable. And the one thing I learned from him years ago, and he talks about this, is that when you're beating yourself up, or when you're like, I'm no good, or whatever, he has you do this gratitude exercise. So when you find yourself, you just name 5 things that you're grateful for. And what he always had you do is like, when you were standing in line at the ATM or you're waiting at a traffic, you just train your brain to be like, well, I have a roof over my head and I turned my faucet on and clean water came out and I could actually walk on. And just this from a very science-based, the power of being in gratitude. And
I love it.
It's great. And this book is great. So I'm just rereading it. It's fantastic for people. It's just great. So it's he writes with someone else, and I'm so mortified I can't remember, but it's Dr. Phil Stutz, and it's called
Well, we'll
The
be
Tools.
linking to it because we do link to all of these books.
Lori,
as well.
you would love it.
I was like, this is right up my alley. This is right up my alley. I love it. Yes, I'm definitely going to read this.
And then on just a little side,
Yeah,
I'm also reading the Pam Anderson autobiography called Love, Pamela. It's so good. It's so good.
Did you watch? I didn't watch. Was it enough?
Watch it.
I heard it was great. I heard it was great.
Just to watch a person, it's her poetry's in it, and to hear her journey and as a woman, and like, it's just great. I love her, like her animal activism, and just sort of like, what her ex-husband was rewarded for and she was beaten down for. And it's just, she's lovely. And you see this person. It's great. I loved it.
I love it. I love it. I think it's great.
And watch the documentary. It was directed by her son, and you fall in love with her. You just fall in love with her.
So excited. That's
I
awesome.
know.
I love it. Thank you so much. And then we ask this question of all of our guests, and I especially love asking it of professional organizers, because again, there's this misconception out there that everything in our lives is all together all the time. And we all know that that's just not true. So in this particular season of your life, where do you feel the most organized, and where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess? And my new thing is I'm asking everybody to start with their hot mess moment, because I want to end on a high note, but like, tell if there's something in your life that's like, could be a little bit more organized, or I'm feeling a little cluttery in this area.
Yeah, my closet is out of control right now. It's just like, I don't know what, I think between the wedding and like that, and we traveled a bit, and like I went in there, I to be honest, and this is the thing, that clients say, like, I'm kind of getting dressed out of my laundry basket right now. Like I'm like, this weekend, I'm like, oh yeah, you got to go spend a couple hours in there and get it back. So my closet is a hot mess. And guess what? It happens and doesn't make me a bad person. Nope. And I give it a little bit of attention, and it'll get back to where I want it. That's
exactly.
So,
I love it.
My closet is a bit of a hot mess.
All right. And where do you feel like you're thriving right now in the world of, and it could be organization with your business or your time. It doesn't have to be a technical space. It could be whatever. Like,
I am so on point with the financials for my company. I hired a new bookkeeping service. I hired a new CPA. I hired someone to do my invoicing for my company. I hired these women who are amazing at what they do, and they are doing it, and I'm not doing it all myself. And it is so on point. I know at a click of a button where I am financially at every moment in the business. We're drilling down. We're looking at growth. It's like, to just understand that I can't do it all, and that hiring a professional who's good at what they do is game changing. The other day I was like, oh my golly, this is great. And like, I'm sleeping better. I really am sleeping better.
I love that. I love it. I think that's awesome. So I appreciate you sharing that, because again, there's no shame. Actually, it's healthy to outsource. I always tell people, especially women who are stay-at-home parents, because I think there's this guilt that you have to do it all because you just do. I mean, I had that false narrative myself. And I say, if you're the CEO of your home, the CEO of a business doesn't do all the jobs.
Yes.
They don't. They oversee the vision and they weigh in, but they delegate and they defer and they do all of these things. And if you are the CEO of your home, it's not realistic to think from a sustainable perspective that you're going to be able to do all the things. And so I
have my dear friend Wendy always says, you know how you're superwoman and you get it all done? You delegate. Like, it's just impossible. And so I really think, and this is one of the reasons I love talking to you as like a longtime organizer, is the power in understanding where you need help and asking for it and getting it is how you succeed.
Yeah.
Like, I always say this, I don't like to garden. I don't enjoy it. I love to have a yard I love plants. I love to see it. I don't like to garden. when I hired a gardener who's very good at what he does, I get to enjoy my yard. I don't have to it's a win-win for
Right.
everybody.
And you're supporting another local business who
Yes.
enjoys gardening. Like they're doing
Yes.
what they like. And that's I'm here for all of it.
That's
I
great.
love it. I love it. Tracy, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I hope everybody goes out and gets your book. Again, don't forget, go on, leave us a review, screenshot it. And again, we have 3 books that we're going to be raffling off for people. So I'm excited for people to read it and really look at the clutter from the consumption perspective. I just think it's brilliant. I love it, love it, love it. So anyway, thanks so much. And if this is your first time tuning into our show, you picked a great one. Make sure you click the subscribe, follow button wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, we're on YouTube as well. We now have 2 episodes that we drop weekly. We've got our long form interview styles that we drop every Thursday, and on Mondays are our quick tip of the week. So just a little short nugget to get you motivated, inspired to get your week off on a great start. So lots of content, and please follow us on social media, and we love to connect up with you. So until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love and share it with your friends. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at This Organized Life Podcast. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can head on over to our website at simply the letter B like boy organized.com, which is filled with tons of resources, including free downloads, checklists, links to our amazing organizing partners, and all of our digital offerings. I'll see you next week for another episode of This Organized Life.